Another name for grid work would be like service to Gaia, flowing love into Gaia. There's so many names that you could use. Grid work feels like so adult. And sometimes our inner child needs to hear grid play. That's another way you could put it. But you're essentially supporting the energetic grids or frameworks of Gaia. Greetings and welcome to Activations with JJ. I'm so excited to have you here for this episode all about one of my very favorite subjects, and that is planetary grid work. You can see right here that I have a little visual aid that is here to inspire us and hold the frequency of grid work. Of course, the color is significant as well because we are very much anchoring in the golden grid right now, along with the crystalline grid. And I decided to create this podcast episode because obviously I get a lot of questions about even what grid work is. And what I've discovered is that a lot of you out there are doing it unknowingly. And I want you to just kind of know and understand a little bit more about what you are doing and maybe how to enhance the grid work that you're already carrying out on the planet and how you're serving Gaia. I'm really excited as well because coming up in the next few months, I have a new partner who's always been a partner, and that is my husband, Michael. Some of you have heard me talk about him. He's been on a podcast or two, and he has really, over the last couple of months, stepped into a lot of the grid work piece. And so what we're developing within our starseed community and within my offerings has involved a lot of his presence. Maybe one day I'll have him on the podcast. But essentially what's happening is we are really leaning into specific grid work activities. And it's been fun to create both virtual and in-person grid work collaborations, I should say, over this next year. So, you've heard me talk about Mexico. That is happening very, very soon. I'm really, really excited. My husband has actually been with me on all the grid work trips that I've done over these last couple of years. And he really enjoys it. He actually really gets into it. And even though he's a little more silent, you don't hear from him as much. He has been doing this for a while and has a lot of experience. Now he's like really into it. And there's some offerings that he'll be leading within the community that I'm excited to share with a little bit more about with you. So with regards to grid work, again, I thought I would walk you through some of the basics in case this is semi-new to you. And even if it's not new to you, hopefully there's something that I share that will enhance your understanding of what grid work is and how you can carry it out. So that being said, let's just drop in energetically. With the new video format, I feel like I sometimes also need to get a little bit more embodied because I'm sitting here in front of a camera, not just my microphone, my friend. I have a camera and a microphone to navigate. And so right now, I'd love to just have you loosen up your body a little bit. It's an interactive podcast. If you haven't joined me before, rolling out the shoulders and the neck. And of course, I would love to call in our guides, our higher selves. Some of you remember last year when I offered Nexus Advanced Grid Worker Training, and that name Nexus has stuck with me into this year. And if you didn't get a chance to be involved with Nexus, don't worry. I have more Nexus coming through this year. In fact, I can't remember if I said it here on the podcast, but if I didn't, the idea popped in connected to those keywords for January, which actually apply to the entire year. Do you guys remember what those are? They're 3 words. They're keys, they're codes. Open, reclaim, and restore. Don't forget those. Those are special code words, I should say. That's a better word for them. Our inner child loves the word code word. So the way that it's happening is I will be offering Nexus Open, Nexus Reclaim, and Nexus Restore. That's the way these projects have played out. In addition to the in-person gridwork excursions I'll be going on throughout the year. But Nexus, again, was the name that popped in. And so as we tune into the idea of Nexus, it is a convergence point. So what I feel I'm doing is allowing and holding space for the coming together of all kinds of grid work. And that's what you'll find in my community. In our starseed community, we have a few different focuses. We focus on personal ascension. We focus on light language development. And code sharing codes. Actually, it's not just light language development. It's for people who are already sharing light language, and it's exchanging codes. We're focusing on grid work, not just planetary grid work, but galactic grid work. Some of you know I did the Orion lineage reconciliation and the Lyran lineage reconciliation projects. And then finally, we focus on collective ascension, how we can carry out this ascension process as a collective together. Yay, how we can all get along. So those are the topics. And the third Sunday of every month in the community, we meet at 1:11 p.m. Pacific. And our topic is planetary and galactic grid work. So you can see that right here. Some of the themes that we've covered lately include nation-to-nation reconciliation. That was a fun one that we did last week, where we tuned into the G7. If you do not know what the G7 is, it is a conglomerate of nations that are, for all intents and purposes, holding some of the power in the world. And or claim to be holding some of the power, or it seems to be they're holding some of the power stances in the world with regards to, population, GDP, those types of things. And some of you might remember that I've mentioned before, my original degree in college and in university was international relations. So all of this is taking me right back to that, but I am needing little refreshers. But these are the types of things that we do and the topics that we cover when we are in the containers where grid work is happening. But that's not the only place grid work is happening. One of the reasons I decided to talk about it today is because I just went on a little grid work expedition for 2 hours with some friends here in LA. And as you know, LA has been through quite a loss with the recent fires. And so I decided to get together with a couple of friends, and we went to a central location that was kind of right in between where the two fires were. And we started doing grid work, and it just got me just into this mode of like, I need to share this because people could do this all over the world. It's not complicated, and it is so magical. If you joined me for my Instagram lives, those happen Thursdays at 8 a.m. Pacific, you might have heard me a couple weeks ago talk about how everything is magic. Like, you step into anywhere in this planet and you can find those little nods, those little winks from the universe. And that is how grid work feels to me. When we set out to support Gaia, and that's another name for grid work, would be like service to Gaia, flowing love into Gaia. There's so many names that you could use. Please share yours in the comments if you have another name for grid work. Grid work feels like so adult. And sometimes our inner child needs to hear grid play. That's another way you could put it. But you're essentially supporting the energetic grids or frameworks of Gaia. And you might see that like her chakra system, her meridians. You could see that in the waterways, right? You could see that in all of the energetic nodes, the important sort of vortex points and energy points, just like we have those. We have those on our body. Gaia has those too. And so one of the ways we can serve her is through carrying out this grid work or grid play. And so there are a few little steps that I like to share with people. That's my personal practice with grid work. Now, as always, when I share things with you, make sure you run them through your own discernment. Take what you need, release what you don't. Some of this will apply to you, some of it won't. And some of you probably have really good ideas that you can share in the comments because you can add, because I am not the end all, know all of how to do grid work. I'm still learning as well. So the first thing that I like to remind people is that it is much easier to do grid work and way more effective if you are embodied, if you are fully embodied. And it sounds very, very simple, but sometimes if you check in, sometimes we're not there. We're not in the present moment and we're not fully embodied. As starseeds, we sometimes like to float around and flit around. So the first number one thing I do, whether I'm in a virtual grid work experience or we're carrying out an in-person grid work excursion like I'll be doing in Mexico soon at Teotihuacan, is just tune in. So I'd like you to walk you through that because today in the podcast, we'll actually be doing a little grid work too. So tuning into your body, just making sure you're all here. One of the best mantras for that is I am, or I am here, I am now. Taking a deep breath and adjusting your body in any way, shape, or form that you might need to. And of course, if you speak light language or bring that light language through, it's a great way to self-calibrate. Kiana kataraya sutukusha. Ia takatia 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 tukush tatatia rakna kiaya sukoya. Number 2 step is to call in a field of energy that amplifies the work that you are doing. Sometimes that field is going to be 0 point energy, but I do let people know that 0 point energy can be quite intense on the body. So if you're not used to working with 0 point energy or the void, then I highly recommend that you call in a little bit more gentler field of energy, and that's one that I named the field of quantum flow. Both of those fields of energy will take what you're doing outside of time and space so that it applies across all timelines, all dimensions, and all realities where it's needed. And then you don't have to worry about any of that. It's really doing time magic and space magic. So you might find yourself when you're in the middle of grid work going through different timelines, and there might be signs and signals around you that are telling you that. For instance, in 2022, I did a special event on 11/11 in Sedona, and we ended up hiking just outside of Sedona by the Peace Garden, if you know where that's at. And we all met. There were about 20 of us were there. And this was like one of my very first grid work excursions. And it was a hike. Okay. So we were going on a hike and I was just tuning in along that path. And something that happened was some little groups kind of got split off because they wanted to stay behind and tune into the land and do their thing, which was fine. It wasn't like we were in a place where they were going to get super lost. We were right next to a neighborhood. But the funny thing is that I ended up coming back to the original point where we started, and not everybody was with us, but little groups started coming in, and it was like they were coming in one right after the other. But the funny thing is they said, we just got here and we know this other group got here just a few minutes ago, but we didn't even cross paths with them. So, there's a lot of vortexes in Sedona, but you end up going through different timelines, different dimensions as you're doing grid work when you call in this field of quantum flow or void, 0 point energy. So we can do that now. Taking a deep breath, allowing ourselves to come into this space and either the field of quantum flow or 0 point energy. And then step number 3, I already feel them coming. That's who I was channeling. We call in the earth ancestors and the star ancestors to help us be the bridge between the planet and the cosmos. And so whatever we're doing, we want to make sure to anchor that in fully. If you're doing galactic grid work, this will change just a little bit, obviously. But allowing yourself to just tune into the presence of any earth ancestors who would like to stand by and witness, assist, provide support, and also star ancestors. Today, I'm actually feeling that what we're doing with the grid work that we do today, which I think will be supporting the golden grid of Gaia, I feel the Pleiadian Council of Light. I feel the Lyrans. The Lyran Council of something like Council of Ascension is what I'm hearing. And the earth ancestors I'm feeling feel a little bit elemental, so it feels like earth dragons. Obviously, beyond those 3 steps, being in the now, present moment, in your I am presence, in your sovereignty, fully embodied, step number 1. Step number 2, calling in that field of energy, either 0 point or quantum flow. And step number 3, calling in the earth ancestors and the star ancestors. Beyond that, you get to create your own stuff because this is play for you. So please, I would encourage you to sit down and decide how else you want to do that. So you set your intention. Obviously, you can tune into a special place on the planet, somewhere that's calling to you. If you need to use visuals to figure that out or pull cards, you can do that too. You can bring those with you. Just today, I was actually at a spot in LA and with my 2 friends. in, I said, okay, we're going to do this energy work. And I tuned in and I felt like somebody needed to bring singing bowls. Somebody needed to bring tuning forks. And some of them also brought other things. I ended up bringing chocolates. I didn't know why. I also brought oranges. I brought white roses. So you're going to notice that as you're planning for an in-person grid work event, things will start popping in that you need. And I promise you, just follow your intuition. You won't always know. I find that anchoring into a spot when you're doing grid work is actually really wise because you can really lock in. Now, hiking and doing grid work is also possible, but with your group of people, it's easier to just find a spot and anchor in. Now, you might hike to that spot. And the funny thing about what happened to me today was that I got to the place we were meeting and there was no parking. And so I ended up, and it was actually a park. It was a very large park here in Los Angeles. I ended up driving to another parking spot that wasn't going to work. And then I ended up making a complete circle and was late. In the beginning, I was going to be early, and I like being early. There's a part of me that's like, I'm on time. And I was late, and I was like frustrated. I was like, oh, now I'm late. Oh, darn it. But as I was nearing the end of that circle, that loop that I did around this park, my guides were like, this was all planned out. You needed to grid the perimeter of the space that you're in. And so that's what I did. And every mistake when you're doing grid work is not a mistake. If you feel like something is off or went wrong, it's never wrong. It's always exactly what needed to happen, even though you didn't originally plan on it. So when you're doing grid work, one of my other tips is be prepared for impromptu happenings. In this one, it was a very busy day. It was such a busy day. It was a Saturday. It was like so many people. And tuning into that, sometimes you might think, oh, I need to do grid work in a calm, quiet place where I can meditate. Well, let me tell you, if you do grid work in a place that's crowded, or if you feel called to do grid work in a place that's crowded, I've done it in Central Park. I've done it in other crowded places like the mall in Washington, D.C. There's always a reason. And I've been told by my team that every single person there has a role to play, conscious or unconscious, in the grid work that you're doing. And these are things we do all the time that we don't always know when we're not being always so intentional about it. But I just knew that we needed a lot of people to converge to receive the codes that we were putting out for that grid work. And then they would disperse them wherever they came from, because I felt like they came from all over the Los Angeles area. So it amplified our work. In addition to that, something that's happened to me quite frequently when I'm doing grid work outside is there will be helicopters. There will be helicopters. And whenever there are helicopters, I'm not in duality, so I don't get afraid about helicopters watching us or doing things. I just know that they're there to help. They're there to witness. And they're there to spread the codes too. Their little helicopter rotors are creating that motion and that energy. Maybe they're helping with the vortex. We don't even know. So again, every single part of what you are doing is 100% going to make sense after the fact. Even though things like a guy who drove up with his RC car right in the middle of our little meditation, right after my friend had pulled an inner child card that said, run wild. These are the things that happen. Now, our general vibe when we were doing the grid work, because this is kind of the nuts and bolts that I want to share you, it's a little bit hard to explain, but it's very, very intuitive. We just started tuning in to the land. So connecting with the land, putting our hands on the land. If you're doing this astrally, like you're not there physically, but you're maybe on a Zoom call, you can still do that. I highly recommend having something tactile, something you can touch to connect into, like a crystal or an object that is going to help your conscious mind better tune in to that place. Because sometimes if it's not there physically, our conscious mind's like, I'm not on board. I don't know what's going on. So grabbing something, whether it be, like I said, a card or a crystal, whatever it is, and then tuning in. So today I'd like you to find, you might have to pause the podcast, and if you're driving, you can just pretend. I'd like you to find a quartz crystal nearby you, or imagine one in your mind. We're going to use the quartz crystal frequency to help us do a little bit of grid work today. We're modeling that. So we've done all of the things. We've called in all of the beautiful help the star ancestors and the earth ancestors and any other beings that you'd like to have assist. You might feel those in your field. And this is like a mini version of what I do in our community. And I do feel it's connected to the golden grid. That's why I have this object in my hands. I feel like it's connected to the golden grid. And interestingly enough, on this, you can see the equator. So I feel like I'd like to invite you to position yourself at either the North Pole, the South Pole, or somewhere along the equator. The North Pole, the South Pole, or somewhere along the equator. So in your mind's eye, just allow yourself to journey somewhere on one of those points. Good. We're all doing this together. You might feel some of the others. Once we lock into our I am presence, it's a really wonderful way to unify our intention. Beautiful. And with the assistance of the guides that we've got stepping forward, the Pleiadians, the Lyrans, and the dragons, we're going to simply take a moment and reharmonize any parts of the ley lines of Gaia in those areas. So for the North and South Pole, those are nodes of energy, so more like a point. And for the equator, obviously, that's more like a line, a ley line. And so just setting that intention. And the other thing that's kind of funny that's popping in for you right now is pick a point in time that is along the history of Gaia. So I feel like some of you are going to go to the time of the dinosaurs. I don't know why I just saw dinosaurs. I saw woolly mammoths. So just allowing yourself to tune into that. You might hear a year. You might hear 2000 BC. You might be at a time in the future. So we're gridding space and time. And it's interesting. I know you might say, well, but JJ, doesn't this apply across all time, space, dimensions, and realities? It does. But for some reason, they're wanting us to anchor in not only to a location, but also to a time. And remember, there are multiple dimensions that cross that time juncture. And so it gets a little wild. I won't go into that now. I feel like that's going to take us down a rabbit hole. So taking a couple of deep breaths. For me, toning in light language is a really rapid way to provide the grid work and to shift and harmonize. So just allowing yourself to tone or do a little bit of light language right now, sending it into the spot where you are. And they're asking us to take it and anchor it in from the point where we are all the way till all of the energy that we're sending into Gaia is meeting in her core. So you're going to send and infuse that part of the more surface area, infuse that into the core. And there's a golden heart in the center of Gaia that I'm feeling that we're activating. It has something to do with the Lyrans. It feels connected to Lyra. It's almost like a portal to Lyra is what I'm hearing. Whew, beautiful. We're going to just finish up now. You can actually do this more if you want when the podcast is over. Ariatatai. Thank you to all of our beautiful guides. And then gently returning back to your physical reality. If you were driving, hopefully you didn't get too deep. But just shaking out your body. And obviously, like I said, I'm always in a moment of love and gratitude for you. Love and gratitude for you. Thank you so much for co-creating that grid work with me. I hope that by doing it, it taught you a little bit about it. I know there are a certain percentage of you that have been in a live gathering with me, but there are thousands of you watching this who have never been in a live gathering. And so I thought again that I wanted to give you a little taste of what we do and help you by just modeling what grid work is. Now, obviously you can do that same thing that we did virtually, but actually in a, out on an excursion. And I don't normally do this, but I was encouraged this time around to issue a little challenge to you to go in person and do some grid work with a friend, preferably 3 people total. The power of the number 3 is very strong. You could even all get on a phone call and all go somewhere and do it. So if you don't have any in-person friends that do this kind of stuff, this woo-woo stuff, maybe just get on a phone call with some people. That's one of the reasons I have the starseed community, is because it allows people to connect. And right now we are really in a mode as humanity of encouraging the collaboration and the co-creation with compassion, which is actually the theme of the gathering we just did 2 days ago. So if you heard me talk about this in the last podcast, how we were anchoring into the human template, and you didn't get a chance to attend with us live, the playback is available through the link below. And I recommend that you listen and participate, because it is a huge thing for humanity and for all of us starseeds in particular, not naming names, but starseeds, to fully anchor into our human template, reconcile ourselves with that human template, that new human template that is calibrated to harmonize with our soul purpose, and really be an expansive force, you could say, or presence in this ascension, co-creation, and collaboration that we are carrying out as humanity. We are all on the same team. That's something that's been coming through. We are all on the same team. And I'm sending you so much love. And to reiterate that we are all on the same team, I am you, and you are me, and we are we. Sending you lots of love again, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.